Today we're going to be looking at using a list in Python, which isn't to be mistaken with an array, but it's very similar to how an array works. We're also going to look at 2D arrays, and we'll give them a go in Python as well. So far in Python, we've been using variables all the time, and we're going to continue to use something very similar to a variable today, but we're also going to include multiple elements that we're going to store within the one variable, and this is known as a list. Now, I mentioned earlier that an array is different from a list, but they work in a very similar way. An array has to be one data type only, whereas a list can be multiple data types and can store multiple elements inside the one thing. They're also referred to as mutable, which means you can change them, add or remove items to them after we've created them. Okay, so let's have a look at a little Python example of them. So as you can see here on line 4, this is the list that I have created. So I've just called it my list, which is a bit like a variable. It doesn't have to be called my list. You can call it anything you want. You could call it numbers, for example. That would also be fine. But I'm going to keep it called my list because you can see I've done a few different things with it as well, so we'd have to change them all. Okay, so we've got my list equals, and then inside the square looking brackets, not the rounded ones, the square ones, you can see I've got my different numbers that I've stored, my different integers. And you can see that I've got a comma to separate them. Now, what's really important is knowing that these have got what's known as an index number, which is whereabouts in the list they are. So in the first position is position 0. The second one is position 1. Position 2 and position 3 and so on. So in this little example program that I've got here, if I just run it, you would see what happens when we do print, which is to display. So we can display the list itself, and then I'll show you what happens when we do print and then display the list, but just with the 1 inside square brackets there, and we'll see what happens there. I'm just going to remove this for now so we can only see this. So this is what it looks like when you run this type of program. So if you display the whole list, it will look like this, look kind of similar to what it does in the Python program itself. You can see the square brackets, and then you can see each of the elements that are inside of the list. And the next one, where it's displaying just the 20, that's because we've displayed what is in position 1. So we said earlier that position 0 is the 10, and then position 1 would be the 20, which is why it's displaying this 20 here. So other things that you could do with your list, here is an example of adding something to the list. So we've already created a list here, and we're going to use something known as .append, which is to add something to our list. We are going to add the integer 50, which will add it in at the end after the 40. We will then display the whole list so you can see what it looks like to make sure that you know it's definitely been added at that point. And then we'll see what happens when we display what's in position 4. So here's my program running from the top. So here is it to begin with. Then we displayed just position 1. Then here is our updated list where it's been appended to it. And then here is position 4 showing that the 50 is definitely a part of our list. You can also see another example that I've added in at the bottom here, which it says .pop. Now pop is a way of removing something completely from the list. I wanted to remove whatever was in position 2. If we just go back and look at our list, we had 0, 1, 2. So 30 was in position 2, and then you can see when we display the list right at the bottom, 30 now doesn't exist. It's not part of the list anymore, so it removed it whilst the program was running, and then we displayed what was left, which was these positions of the list. Okay, so just to finish, I want to talk you through something known as a 2D array. So here is another example of a 1D array, which this time instead of storing integers, it's storing names. So you can see we've stored the name Alice, comma, Bob, and then Charlie. And if I was to run this program now, it will display what's in position 0, so it will just display the name Alice. Now the 2D array is a little different because when you've got one set of square brackets, that's a 1D array. If you've got another set of square brackets inside those square brackets, that's what makes it a 2D array. So it can go across multiple lines. I've laid it out like this to make it look a bit like a grid because I feel like it's just an easier example to follow, but you don't have to do that. So I've opened my first square brackets, which are here, and then inside it you can see in this first row I've got integers 1, 2 and 3, then I've got 4, 5 and 6, and then 7, 8 and 9. Let's display using print what's in our grid. Line 0 would be this first one, but then in position 2 would be this one within line 0. So you can see in this case, it will just display the 3 because we've got similar again. The first one's always 0. So 0, which is this first line, and then position 2, which is this one just here. So as I said, it doesn't have to look like a grid. If that's confusing you, you can just do it all on one line like this. This is the exact same grid, but as you can see, it's just all one together. So I've got open my square brackets here. I've then done another one here, and then here is our first row like it was before. It's just all on one line. I think it looks a little neater like this, but it's completely personal preference. That's completely up to you. So you can see when you're storing lots of information, it makes sense rather than doing multiple variables, you can just do one list which is going to store all of that information for us, including multiple types of data. So it's really, really useful. And that's it for this one. I'll see you next time.